Both of Reese's soldiers lived and recovered well enough. She received a medal for her quick defense of their lives. She stood tall, even leaning on her crutches, when the general pinned the medal to the front of her ambulance driver's uniform. "No one is going to mess with Miss St. John. She'll give anyone who tries to mess with her boys absolute hell," one of the men she had saved said in admiration. "Go home, boys, with your heads held high. You deserve rest and repose. Go now, and I'll meet you at the end of this cruel war." Reese had invited them back to her country house on behalf of her uncle, the Parliament representative Stephen St. John. Initially, he had opposed Reese's going to war as an ambulance driver. "I'll be careful, Uncle Stephen, I promise." She looked to him when she said this, as she was preparing to leave for her training. "You shouldn't make promises that you might not be able to keep, Reese," he had said to her warily. He was the closest to a father that she'd ever have. Cedric St. John had died years ago, a casualty of his own philandering ways. She had only met him in small moments, and she remembered how cold Uncle Stephen was to him, how her mama seemed to fear him. She did not know what to rightly make of this man who had helped give her life. "So, you're one of my little girls, are you? I wonder if you're the prettiest of your sisters, the most clever. I often wonder what your brothers are like, too. Are they better men than me?" He amused himself by pondering aloud. He poured himself a drink from her Uncle Stephen's whiskey without asking. He looked at Reese over the glass to contemplate one of the lives that he had accidentally created. The girl held his stare, uneasy in his presence. She felt as though she had to keep watching him in case he tried something untoward. She, too, thought of him as Cedric St. John, for it was impossible to think of him as her true father. Perhaps half her blood came from him, but why did he make that fact feel so inconsequential? "So, my dutiful monk of a brother has decided to write you in his will as his heir," Cedric St. John said with a wicked smile, and then turned to Stephen. "You really couldn't stand Cousin Philip, could you, Stevie? You had to write in one of my precious children instead." "Don't call me Stevie. You know as well as I do, Cedric, that Philip is less trustworthy than even you are. The fool gambled away his father's entire hard-earned fortune. A true dithering idiot he is. He'd obliterate our family's legacy in less than a year." Uncle Stephen snapped back, stingier than Reese had ever seen him. He was protective of anything he felt mattered. The future of the St. John family's finances concerned him highly. "Was she the only one you could manage to find? You must not be trying very hard. I must say I'm disappointed in you, Stephen." Cedric was goading on his brother's temper. "At least I found one of them. I cared about the fate of those children. They are my nieces and nephews regardless. I have no children of my own. You know that. So I must provide for yours." "If you can find them, that is, Stevie." Cedric seemed amused with the idea that his children lay scattered across England, maybe further. Reese found the man detestable, evil even. He seemed to think the fate of his abandoned children was a laughing matter, that their predicament was just a game to him. Her Uncle Stephen grit his teeth and pinched his nose under his glasses. He was losing patience fast. "Perhaps you shouldn't goad on Uncle Stephen so, Father. He's doing the best he can. You did not make it easy on him, that's for sure." Reese had struggled to call him father. The word felt unnatural on her tongue. "What's this? Are you ungrateful to be here with the St. John name pinned to your chest, little one? Should I take you and your mother back to that awful hole where my brother found you?" Cedric sneered at Reese as her stomach crumpled up in a hollow pain. So he knew exactly where she and her mother had lived all this time, and not once did he attempt to help them. He had let her mother suffer all those years, and for no real reason at all. His callous indifference, she supposed, and how it made her insides boil to contemplate. "That's not funny, Cedric. Leave Reese and her mother alone. They don't need you pestering them any further. Now get out of my sight." Stephen growled and stood up suddenly from his seat. "I came for my money," Cedric insisted, giving Reese a side glance that could cut marble, as if he were blaming her for his brother's anger. Foolishly, he stood his ground, though he had ruined his own chances to appeal to Stephen already. Well, you've proven to me that it's wasted on you. I'm saving it for your children. At least they'd give a care to someone other than themselves. Stephen's nose wrinkled in disgust. Reese watched Cedric's shadowy retreat, defeated by his own brother's exacting nature. She wondered when the two brothers stopped being friends. Was it in her lifetime, or had Cedric always plagued Stephen with his wretched behavior? I'm going to be cleaning up his messes until the day of my death, aren't I? Stephen wondered aloud and then realized his niece was still in the room with him. Oh, darling, I'm sorry about Cedric. It's fine, Uncle. I had no expectation whatsoever. She was only 16 at the time and had never met such a character like Cedric St. John. Stephen St. John was horrified by his brother's wide philandering. He tried to turn over every possible stone to find those missing children. This massive fortune is to be split into 8 ways for every living adult child of your father's issue, he said to Reese, as he trusted her to be fair to the 7 others if they could ever be found. How is it that you found that there are 8 of us, Uncle? She asked him. Because I combed through your father's papers, Reese. He was involved with 7 different women that he thought enough of to write down. Your mother was the easiest to find because she didn't leave the place where she worked when she and Cedric knew each other. All of the others I'm still working on finding leads for. Most have moved away, and some have even married, changing their names, making them more difficult to find, Stephen said, fidgeting with his glasses. Wouldn't that be 7 children, though? No, your father actually found that a maid he pursued in his youth had twins, which she claimed were his, so there are at least 8 of you. Reese whistled through her teeth. That seemed like the classic spoiled rich young man move to make, to selfishly ruin the life of a maid and carry on like the womanizing beast he was. Were these women really nothing to Cedric St. John? Stephen stared at the child and shook his head. His brother's lust knew no bounds, and he cared not what it did to anyone else, not his women, not the children who were left fatherless in his wake.